Every person you are about to meet stood near a dangerous wild animal, heard a clear warning, and decided it did not apply to them. Not bad luck, not a freak accident. A series of choices, from a man who steps out of a safari vehicle for a closer photograph of a resting lion, to a man who climbs over a zoo barrier and drops down into a tiger enclosure to get the perfect shot, closing the last few feet that were keeping him alive. Each of them was told exactly what would happen. Each of them went anyway. And the last one is the one nobody saw coming. It was 2015, at a game reserve in South Africa, the kind of place where lions are close enough to fill a camera frame and far enough away to keep you alive, as long as you keep a sheet of glass between you and them. Dave Wernicke was an American tourist, and he was the kind of man who treated a safety briefing as background noise. The rules were simple, and they had been said out loud more than once. Stay inside the vehicle, keep your windows up. Do not, under any circumstances, step out near the cats. Wernicke had a camera, a destination he had paid good money to reach, and the unshakable confidence of someone who had never been wrong about anything that mattered to him. The lions were doing nothing unusual. They were lying in the open, watching the slow parade of vehicles the way they always did, completely unbothered, which is exactly the trap. A calm lion looks like a tame lion to a person who wants it to. Wernicke wanted a selfie, the type where the animal is right there over your shoulder and a window and 40 meters of dry ground were ruining the composition. So he removed the window and the 40 meters. He opened the door and stepped out, lifting his phone to frame himself against the pride. A lion does not see a tourist with a camera. It sees a slow, upright shape that has just entered its space on foot, and it responds the way territorial cats have responded for hundreds of thousands of years. The distance that had felt enormous closed in seconds. By the time anyone could react, it was over. He was mauled and killed before help could reach him. Police later described the death plainly. It was the result of ignoring basic safari rules. A man leaving the safety of a vehicle in an enclosure built around the fact that lions are lethal. There was no malfunction, no rogue animal, no surprise. The lion was never the problem. It did exactly what a lion does to something that walks into its territory and stops being part of the metal box it had learned to ignore. Dave Wernicke was the variable. He removed the one thing standing between curiosity and a predator, and the predator simply behaved like a predator. Before we go on, do subscribe, because these aren't animal stories. They're about people certain the rules bent just for them, because the next one swaps a wild reserve for a public zoo and proves that a fence does not protect a man from his own decisions. It was May of 2016. At the Dallas Zoo in Texas, a controlled, family-friendly place with paved paths, gift shops, and clearly posted rules about what you may and may not do near the animals. Victor J. Bernard was an adult, a teacher and a school principal, a man whose job was literally telling young people not to do reckless things. The zoo's rules were not subtle. Do not throw food or objects into the habitats. Stay back from the barriers. These instructions exist because a gorilla habitat is not a petting zoo, and a silverback is a wall of muscle that can fold a person in half without effort. Bernard, by the accounts of the day, wanted to get the gorilla's attention, and he wanted to do it in front of company. He had a banana. The smart, boring thing to do with a banana at a zoo is to eat it or throw it away. Bernard threw it into the gorilla enclosure, a small act meant to impress the people he was with, an attempt to provoke a reaction from an animal that was minding its own business. He got the reaction. The gorilla responded to the thrown object and the intrusion exactly as a large territorial primate does, and Bernard ended up injured and hospitalized for his trouble. He was, at least, more fortunate than most people on this list. He lived to be embarrassed. The zoo treated it as precisely what it was, a preventable visitor violation, a rule broken for the sake of a moment of attention. The gorilla was not euthanized, was not punished, and went on doing what gorillas do. The incident became an internal example of why the rules are written the way they are. The silverback was never the danger here in the sense people imagine. It did not stalk anyone, did not break out, did not go looking for trouble. A man threw food into its home to get a rise out of it, and it gave him exactly what he asked for. The banana is the detail everyone remembers, and it should be, because it captures the whole thing. A grown man, a school principal, risking serious injury for a stunt that a sensible child would know to avoid. It was 2018, near a safari track in the Kruger area of South Africa, and by now you can probably guess the warning, because it is the same one every time, in every language a guide can offer it. Do not get out of the vehicle near the big cats. The man in this case was not widely named in the reporting, but the sequence was depressingly familiar. A lion was near the road, resting or moving, behaving completely normally for an animal that has learned vehicles are not food and not threats. That learned calm is the gift the vehicle gives you. Step outside, and you throw the gift away. The man got out and approached the lion on foot, and whatever he was hoping to gain, a photo, a closer look, a story to tell, it was not worth the cost. The lion attacked, and he was killed. Authorities described the death the way they always do, as preventable, because the person left the vehicle in a place where everyone is repeatedly and explicitly told not to. The lion faced no punishment, because the lion had done nothing wrong. It is worth sitting with how plain this one is. There was no trick, no malfunction, no unusual aggression. A man walked toward a wild lion in lion country, on foot, after being told not to, and the lion treated him exactly as it would treat anything that approaches it on the ground. The vehicle was the only difference between a memorable safari and a fatal one, and he chose to leave it behind. It was 2015, in Florida, around an exotic animal setting, the kind of routine, almost domestic environment that makes danger feel impossible. George Michael Hulsey was an adult, a ranch worker, a man comfortable around animals, and that comfort is exactly what undoes people. The animal was a python, a large constrictor, behaving entirely within its nature, which is to coil and squeeze when something wraps it the wrong way or when it feels the need to grip. Handling a snake of that size is not a casual thing. It demands strict precautions, ideally more than one person present, and a healthy respect for an animal that kills, not with venom but with patient, irreversible pressure. Hulsey overrode all of that, reportedly putting himself into position for a video stunt, allowing the snake to wrap around him. A constrictor does not lunge or rage. It simply tightens, slowly, and every time the breath leaves the lungs, the coils take up the slack and never give it back. There is no dramatic moment, just a quiet, mechanical closing. He was strangled, and he died. Coverage treated it as preventable and tied it squarely to reckless handling, and there is no indication the snake was destroyed simply for being a snake. It had done nothing unusual. It constricted, which is the entire defining behavior of its kind. The contrast is what stays with people. A man who worked with animals for a living, in a familiar setting, killed by an animal that was only ever going to do one thing if given the chance. Hulsey gave it the chance. It was 2011 at Crocodile Cove in Darwin, in Australia's Northern Territory, an attraction built entirely around getting people close to saltwater crocodiles, the largest and most dangerous reptiles on Earth. Jackie McGeorge was an Australian woman, and the warnings at a place like this are about as direct as warnings get. Do not put any part of your body into the enclosure. Do not provoke the animal. A saltwater crocodile in a feeding or training context is not relaxed, it is calculating, and it can move with a speed that a human eye barely registers. McGeorge entered the crocodile enclosure area during what was described as a publicity-style stunt, putting herself within reach of an animal designed by millions of years of evolution to ambush and seize. The crocodile bit her. It did not malfunction. It did not behave abnormally. It simply did what a saltwater crocodile does when prey-sized movement enters its strike range. She survived, which makes her one of the lucky ones here, but she suffered serious injuries. The attraction reviewed its safety procedures afterward, and at no point was the crocodile portrayed as having done anything outside its nature. The shock of this one comes from the setting. It happened at a facility whose entire reason for existing is the careful, controlled viewing of crocodiles, a place that exists because everyone understands these animals are deadly. The barrier between safe and catastrophic is the rule, and the rule only works if you keep your body on the right side of it. McGeorge crossed it, and the crocodile reminded everyone exactly why the rule exists. It was 2016, at a zoo in India, where a tiger lived behind barriers and signs that said, as clearly as paint and metal can, "Do not enter the animal area." The man in this case was not named in much of the reporting, but his decision was unmistakable. The tiger was in its enclosure, behaving normally, doing nothing more than being a tiger in the space humans had built around it. He wanted a selfie, not from the safe side of the rail, not from the viewing area where millions of people see tigers every year and live, but from inside, close enough to be in the frame with the animal. So he climbed in. He ignored the barrier, ignored the signs, and ignored every instinct that should scream at a person standing above a big cat's enclosure. There is a horrible simplicity to what happened next. A tiger does not distinguish between a threat, a meal, and a tourist with a phone. It sees an intruder drop into its territory, and it reacts the way an apex predator reacts. He was attacked and killed. Officials called it a clear case of visitor negligence, and the tiger was not blamed and remained at the zoo. Witnesses and reports stressed that the man had ignored multiple warnings for the sake of a photograph. It is the same pattern as the lion, the same pattern as the crocodile, only here the absurdity is sharpest, because the barrier was right there, doing its job, asking nothing of him except that he stay on the correct side of it. He chose otherwise, and the tiger did exactly what its species has always done. It was 2022, near a village in Uttar Pradesh, India, during a period when leopard encounters near settlements were frequent and frightening, and residents had been warned plainly to keep their distance and to let forest officials handle any sighting. A leopard near a village is an animal under stress, territorial and opportunistic, pushed into proximity with people and reacting accordingly. Ajaib was an adult villager, and when the commotion of a leopard sighting broke out, he did the thing the warnings exist to prevent. He approached. Whether to confront the animal, to drive it off, or simply out of the heat of the moment, he closed the distance instead of holding it. A leopard caught in that situation does not back down politely. It defends itself with everything it has, and it is astonishingly fast and powerful for its size. Ajaib was attacked and killed. Local officials treated it as a preventable contact situation, and the leopard was later dealt with by being captured or moved, depending on the report. But it was not the villain of the story. What makes this one especially difficult is the context. This was not a tourist chasing a photo on holiday. It was a man in a place already living through a wave of leopard conflict, where the danger was known, named, and immediate, and where officials were actively telling people to stay back. The warning could not have been more relevant or more urgent. The leopard was a cornered wild predator, behaving like a cornered wild predator. Ajaib was the variable, the one who closed a gap that everyone had been begged to keep open. It was 2019, at a bear facility in Japan, a sanctuary or wildlife park where visitors were warned, as they always are, not to cross the barriers and not to feed the bears. A bear in an enclosure looks slow, heavy, almost comical, and that appearance has killed people. Behind the bulk is an animal with tremendous strength and speed, and very little patience for something entering its space. The man in this case crossed into the enclosure, putting himself into restricted ground where no visitor is ever meant to be. The bear responded defensively, the way a bear does to close human contact, and he was gravely hurt, seriously injured or killed depending on the specific account. The facility investigated the breach and reinforced its barriers and signage afterward, which is the standard response, even though the barriers and signage had already said everything that needed saying. The framing and the coverage cut to the heart of it. People assume a bear will stay passive at close range, that it will tolerate a person the way a dog might. A wild bear does no such thing. It defends its space. The man entered that space believing, somewhere in his mind, that he would be the exception. The bear did exactly what bears do. The barrier he climbed was not a suggestion or a decoration. It was the line between watching an animal and becoming a problem for it, and he stepped over it of his own accord. It was 2018, at Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, where the rules about wildlife are printed, posted, and handed to nearly every visitor who comes through the gates. Stay at least 25 yards from bison. Never approach them for a photo. These animals weigh as much as a small car and can charge faster than a person can sprint, and the park documents these violations with grim regularity, precisely because so many people get them wrong. The tourist in this case was a woman, and the bison was doing nothing alarming, just feeding or resting in a park zone, looking enormous and placid and utterly unbothered. That calm is the lure. A bison that is not moving looks like a photo opportunity, rather than 1,000 pounds of muscle with a short temper. She walked closer than the rules allow, closing the distance for a better picture, treating the 25 yards as a guideline rather than a limit. The bison let her get close, and then it did what bison do without warning. It charged, lowered its head, and tossed her. She was injured but survived. Rangers used the incident, as they have used so many others, as a textbook example of why the distance rule exists, and the bison was not removed, because the bison had done nothing wrong. It had simply reached the end of its tolerance for a human standing far too close. What people remember is how slow and harmless the animal looked right up until the instant it moved. That is the entire lesson. The danger is not in how the bison behaves most of the time. It is in the few seconds when your proximity finally crosses a line you cannot see, and by then the 25 yards you skipped is the difference between a good photo and a hospital bed. It was 2017, in a safari area in Zimbabwe, on what was supposed to be a controlled stop where tourists watch wildlife from the safety of a vehicle. The warning here is the oldest one in this entire collection. Do not leave the vehicle, and never approach an elephant on foot in the wild. Elephants near vehicles can appear majestic and slow, but they are intensely protective and territorial, and a threatened elephant becomes one of the most dangerous animals on the continent in an instant. The woman in this case left the vehicle to photograph the elephant, stepping out during the kind of pause where everyone is told, firmly, to stay seated and stay quiet. On foot, a person is no longer part of the harmless, rolling shape the elephant tolerates. She becomes a visible, ground-level intruder. The elephant responded the way a protective elephant does, and she was trampled and killed. Authorities and guides described the death as preventable and stressed, again, that elephants must never be approached on foot in the wild. The incident spread widely because it happened during what was meant to be a managed, professionally guided stop, the safest version of an inherently risky activity, and even that was not enough to overcome a single decision to step outside. The elephant was never the problem. It defended its space exactly as elephants have always defended their space. She left the one structure that kept her safe, on foot, near an animal that demands distance above all else. And now the last one, the one I told you nobody saw coming. It was 2021, at a wildlife park in Thailand, and by this point you might think you know exactly how it goes. Another barrier, another tiger, another photograph, and in the broad strokes you would be right, which is the unsettling part. The rules at the park were clear. Do not enter the tiger enclosures. Do not touch the animals. The tiger was behaving normally inside its space, no different from any of the thousands of captive tigers that live their whole lives without harming a soul, because no one climbs in with them. This visitor did. For a close-up photograph, the same prize that has appeared again and again on this list, the person crossed into the enclosure, into the territory of an animal that reacts to intrusion on pure instinct. The tiger reacted instantly, the way a tiger does, and the visitor was severely hurt, gravely injured or killed, depending on which account you follow. Authorities investigated the breach and treated the tiger as having acted instinctively in captivity, which is to say it was not blamed, because it had done nothing a tiger would not do. What makes this the one nobody saw coming is not that it is the most exotic story here. It is that it is the most ordinary. By 2021, the world had watched these incidents unfold for years, had read the headlines, had shaken its head at the lion in South Africa, and the tiger in India, and the elephant in Zimbabwe. And still, knowing all of it, someone climbed into a tiger enclosure for a photo. The warning had been broadcast not just by a sign at this one park, but by every cautionary story that came before it. And it changed nothing. The tiger was the same as every other animal on this list. It was the human, once again, who was the variable. If you think these people should have known better, the next ones are even harder to believe. You can click the video on your screen to go straight there. For now, have a great day.